There's a great deal of expectation that the chemistry that was shown between Donald Trump and al-Sisi over the course of the past really 6 months or so is going to manifest itself in terms of policy change. I'm not entirely convinced that we're going to see much of that. I think that there's going to be a lot to expect in terms of a reduction in critical rhetoric. So that probably would have increased under a Clinton administration, but frankly, probably not that much as compared to the Obama administration. When it comes to the Trump administration, I think we'll see very little in terms of public critique. In terms of financial assistance, for military or for otherwise, we may even see a reduction because part of the whole America First kind of vision of the Trump administration I think necessarily means that they will think twice about continuing foreign aid abroad. And that may actually bite Egypt. I'm not sure. We shall wait and see what sort of negotiations happen, particularly after Sisi visits Washington, D.C. Shukri, the foreign minister, was here relatively recently. It seems that the subject was brought up, but conclusions around it have not yet happened. Donald Trump is popular with certain parts of the elite in Egypt and elsewhere for a number of reasons that have very little to do with him personally and more to do with what he's not. So he's not Hillary Clinton. And I think that that plays a lot within the region because Hillary Clinton was quite unpopular in certain places, not all, but in certain places, because of what they identified, rightly or wrongly, okay, what they identified as flaws in her tenure as Secretary of State. Now, because of that, Trump benefits from not being her. Trump also benefits in some parts of the region from being somebody who's very, very opposed to any and all types of Islamist politics, whether that means the Muslim Brotherhood or al-Qaeda or ISIS, whatever. He's very, very much opposed to that. Now, what I don't think many elites in the region quite understand is that a lot of this isn't simply about Islamism. It's not simply about political Islamism and how it interacts with the public sphere. It's also about Islam as Islam. Okay? It's about Muslims as Muslims, not simply Muslims as adherents to a particular political ideology called Islamism or engaging in that sort of arena. It's much more wide-ranging than that. I think that a lot of the governments in the region are being quite pragmatic when it comes to this point, that they realize that Trump's going to be around for at least 4 years, maybe longer, and they can't afford to cut ties and don't want to cut ties because they benefit a lot from that transatlantic relationship. And as a result, this thing is sort of going to be swept under the carpet as much as humanly possible. So I think within the Egyptian elite, there was a lot of applause at the notion that Trump's administration was interested in designating the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization. I don't think that they will be particularly disappointed if it doesn't happen, because they may think it's already a bit of a long shot as it stands. But certainly they were happy because certainly the elite views the Muslim Brotherhood writ large as a terrorist organization. Anybody who works within the diplomatic arena in Egypt, though, I think realizes that this would be very difficult for the Trump administration to do, partly because of domestic reasons, also partly because of international ones, in that most of their allies in the West would not agree, that's one, but also even within the region. Because if the Muslim Brotherhood is designated writ large as a terrorist organization, then what does that say about Kuwait? What does that say about Jordan? What does that say about Tunisia? Okay, where there are Muslim Brotherhood-inspired movements quite active, let alone Qatar. Okay, I don't think that the region is of one mind on this issue. Certainly the UAE would be very pleased, certainly the Egyptians would be very pleased, but it would cause quite a bit of a diplomatic problem in that regard. So I'm not convinced that they fully expect that. But certainly that's one of the reasons why they were so enthusiastic about a Trump presidency. So I think there are two things that people ought to be paying closer attention to over the coming sort of 6 to 12 months within Egypt. One is economic, one is more security-based. On the economic front, as we get closer and closer to the summer, we can expect there to be more tension and more pressure on the overall system because it is the summer. The summer is when it's partly Ramadan, which is the most expensive month of the year. It's also the time of the hottest months of the year, which is when energy consumption is much higher, which puts another sort of pressure and stress on the economy. So I think that that's something to watch for. The second is the security element. And as ISIS loses territory in Iraq and Syria, I think people will start to leave and go back to their own countries. And a number of Egyptians did join ISIS. And whether or not they come back to Egypt is an open question. Maybe they'll go to another arena, I don't know. But if they do come back to Egypt, then that's certainly a security question. There are other types of security challenges I think are important to look at, particularly on the Libyan border. And also within the pro-Morsi camp, you certainly have an element that has become more radicalized. We don't know what that element actually looks like. We don't know their logistics, their infrastructure, and I'm not sure if we will get full transparency on something like that in the coming months, but it's certainly something to watch. The issue with asking about priorities when it comes to Egypt is that I'm not sure that the Trump administration has a fully functionable view of what priorities in the region actually look like, with the exception of we want security, we want stability, which frankly matches a lot of their allies within the region. There will be, I think, certain points of departure when it comes to things like Syria, because the region itself is split on Syria, and how much of a more aggressive, more firm stance should be taken with regards to Iran. When it comes to Egypt, I'm not sure that they actually have much of a handle of what to look for in the first place, and if they did, whether or not they'd be particularly successful. The Obama administration had certain priorities that they wanted to pursue, and they weren't particularly good at doing that. And there, I think it was a far more cohesive administration as compared to this one. So when it comes to the Trump administration, I'm frankly not sure. There are many things that I would like for them to focus on, but I don't see as realistic under this administration.